Welcome back to the Masters of Materium. My name is Virtuwul, and we're continuing to review the amazing work of Aaelim as he's recreated the deeds of Mirandus in the game of Valheim. Today, we're going to look at the village of the Baron. Grill, let's get right into it.
All right, let's do this. Up next, our first noble deed, we have the Baron. So, starting with the plot map. Ellen, would you like to tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, so on the left-hand side, we have the RPG Maker plot map, and on the right-hand side, we have an aerial screenshot within Valheim of the village of the Baron. So looking down. The top left corner is the village of the Baron house, and the remaining three quadrants are all very well laid out in the village of the Baron. You have the two sets of 4x4 sets of 10x10 buildings, and then you have kind of little like a market area in the bottom right corner surrounded by 7 farming plots. Easy access and consistent access from all 4 sides. And generally a significant step up from the previous deeds in terms of production and shopping capacity. This is, as Grill had mentioned, the very first of the noble deeds and quite respectable in its regard. On the right-hand side, you can notice how everything is really white. That's because everything is covered in snow in this particular image. The village of the Baron that was recreated is at the top of a mountain. So you'll find that everything has that kind of whitish hue to it.
Let's talk about one of the core frame or functions of this deed, which we've called the double outpost in some previous videos. So we've talked that this deed could be an incredible deed to push deep into some territories and go hunting and raiding. So maybe talk a little bit about your building selection, and I think we're going to disagree maybe on some options here because you looked at my options and you didn't like them. But what's your opinion on the core utility of the Baron?
So it depends on what you're using the Baron for, right? This particular Baron was kind of designed as a all you can access sort of Baron, a little bit of everything, kind of a jack of all trades, with the knowledge that there's also a dungeon nearby. So that's why you're seeing the cemetery and temple here. But the main thing is simple, easy access to all the various resources that you would want to access, enough to stock such that you can continue on any adventuring or gathering or harvesting or whatever it is you're looking to do in this particular region.
Now, Grill, you've mentioned before that you think that maybe in order to do the toughest missions, people will have to go to an archduke or a duke in order to max out their stats. And you're concerned that maybe the Baron, for an example, because they don't have the top tier buildings, won't be enough. Maybe Grill, you can talk a little bit about that.
I could see it maybe supporting as much as a mid-level zone. I think if you're going to do the highest level of content, you're going to want the absolute best buffs from temples and maybe even like going to citadels for majestics for like the absolute top stuff. But I think you'll see some of the larger towns supporting some high-level zones. It's funny because originally I said this will be like as you mentioned, the double outpost is something maybe you can move around. Once you're actually in it and walking around, it doesn't feel like something that's going to necessarily be moved that often. It's pretty significant in game.
So Aaelim, here you have a meat stand, and obviously there's no ranching plot. So I'm assuming you have maybe a ranching hamlet around this deed or some other meat-related deed around it with some meat plots.
No, actually, the meat stand is not used just for ranching. Any kind of animal that produces meat can go to the meat stand. And you notice that in the playtest number 3, where you could, kill the deers that were out there. In this particular area, there's also some other animals like wolves and there's drakes and such. And in playtest 3, the deer meat you could bring to the meat stand and you could process it. And the processing didn't involve just the meat. It also involves things such as the sinew that was used to make weapons. So that's really the purpose of the meat stand here. That and to provide traveling rations such as jerky and such for people out hunting and dungeoneering and the like.
Let's check out the imagery.
Sure. So there's going to be a couple images of the Baron being put together, and some I took over the last few days just running around it. Here's the first shot. Do you want to, Aaelim, you want to explain to you how you built the land up in that way?
So most of the land within the actual stone square, that was just built up from the top of that mountain there. And the very dead center of that square is actually where the top of the mountain was. The far left side, which you see is built up really high from the side of the mountain, that was used by actually building boats, which doesn't really make much sense. But there's kind of a unique thing that you can use to build boats in the game that causes them to be on land, and that will make the land at the height of where you create the boat. And unless you can actually see that being done, it's hard to kind of picture or understand that, but that's how this whole kind of structure and layout was created.
They always say nothing makes more sense than a boat on top of a mountain. So next slide will be the house is there, but the rest of the plots are kind of laid out. You can see exactly how they're done. This is a picture I labeled the Great Stair. You can see it goes all the way from the, at the time, unfinished Baron all the way down the mountainside and into the mist off to another town or village, which is connecting to that one. I'm trying to remember on this side. It's tough to tell without the thing being built.
That's the town of the Marquis
Okay.
to the right. To the top part of the Baron, that goes to the town of the Prince. The left side is the Outlook, and the south side goes to a dungeon.
Question: did you build the dungeons, or they're pre-built?
They are pre-built and random. Actually, that particular dungeon only came in a patch just before the most recent one. So people that had these like seeds created before that patch may not have seen those dungeons actually created for them.
Nice.
Yeah, I remember we ran around and had to do a bit of searching to find one because we had discovered quite a few mountains already when we were doing the playing through our first time. To continue on, this is the kind of the front entrance, as it says, Village of the Baron up top. See, next few pictures will be at night because I thought this did look better at night than it did during the day. This is the opposite side, so in the distance you can see the top of that little archway.
It's a beautiful shot.
Yeah. Yeah, very scenic at night with the snow and a little bit of dusting on everything, the lights. This is kind of closer up if you went forward from the entrance as you went toward a little more deeper into the Baron. Shot by the tavern. I think that is the deed owner's home to the left. Shot of the graveyard. You can't really see it here, but on the headstones is a bunch of very cheesy 80s horror movies like Chucky and Freddy and Jason for some reason. This is during the day now. This is shot up from on the roof, kind of a little bit of a low aerial shot into the town, like right in the square there. Those are all the 5x5s you're seeing around the light posts. Some more snowy shots. But around that camp and stay warm. It's freezing to death out there. Some more snow. Again, this is of the kind of the town square. And now on to the house. Aaelim, take it away.
Yeah, so this is the Village of the Baron's house. On the left is the Valheim screenshot. On the right is a picture of the actual NFT Village of the Baron. And, you know, it's as close as you could get it within the Valheim engine. The only thing that's off a little bit is the windows, and it's simply because in Valheim, the smallest structure size is 1 square meter. And based on that, there's some like 0.5 square meter designs to them. But other than that, it's pretty accurate. And the inside, of course, as we'll get to later, was constructed with this in mind. And there's only so many places that you can put things based on the way that the outside looks. So you'll find, like, for example, you see the chimney in the far left there. Well, you know there's going to be a fireplace or stove or some combination thereof at that point in the structure, assuming, you know, it's built similar to what you're seeing with the NFT pictures. And everything was built, you know, with that in mind.
Okay, a couple more shots to go. Yeah, one here of the house kind of mid-construction.
Yeah, so you're seeing with that when you start getting to this height, especially when the base is narrower than the external walls, you start needing support beams. And in Valheim, you concern yourself with weather, you need to concern yourself with ventilation inside for like smoke and such. And you also need to concern yourself with gravity and the strength of your building materials. So as you see, this one required quite a few support beams. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been able to actually build the roof on it.
Yeah, I remember having considerable challenges with the build we did on our own server. One more shot from the outside. Walking up to the Baron's house. This is not quite the first floor. You do walk up a little bit. The main room was kind of small. I couldn't get a good shot of that one. This is the first floor. It's the Baron's throne or seat at his table. And then this is the bedroom. That's pretty much it for the Baron.
You want to take a look at my building choices and
Yeah, absolutely. Let's pull those
dispute
up.
them. Yeah, these are my building choices, which Aaelim doesn't agree fully. So again, I'm just going for like a well-rounded town, obviously, depending what deeds you have around it or what purpose you have for it. It can change. Aaelim, what don't you agree with?
The main thing I don't agree with is the mill. So in general, within Mirandus, you know, this deed has only 7 farming plots, and most of those farming plots are probably not going to be growing things that can be milled. And 7 farming plots is one of the smallest number of farming plots on any deed that's large enough to actually place a mill. Other than that, the things that go along with that, you know, brewery and bakery, again, is mostly farming related. And with such few farming plots, it seems somewhat inefficient.
Good
The
point.
tavern, the cemetery, archery, camp, all those things, the forge for sure, I would definitely consider any and all of those. The 5x5s all look quite good. I would probably replace the ones that I mentioned with potentially larger versions of some of the 5x5s, potentially, like an actual potion shop or an actual jeweler, armor shop, weapon shop, that sort of thing. But other than that, there's a lot of options you can have for the Baron. The many thousands of potential viable options. And let's say that you did actually have a mill, a bakery, and brewery and such. You know, if this Baron was close to say a farming hamlet or a village of the farmer or something, that would make perfect sense. Then you could, you know, take some of the plots that are in the farming hamlet and make them more specialized and potentially have some of that production being done at the Baron as well.
Yeah, great points. And as you had, the temple is probably a good idea as well, especially if you're going to use the Baron for hunting and raiding. So awesome. Are we ready for the video?
Absolutely. Let's do this. All right. So going up the stairs here. We started out. What deed is that again?
That is
That is
the Town
Marquis.
of the Marquis.
So maybe talk a little bit about the biomes in Valheim and how you see the same types of biomes in Mirandus, because we've seen a lot of the artwork. Do you think that McCarthy's going to try to copy all the different types of biomes in Valheim? How many biomes are there in Valheim? I'm curious because I've just played a little bit with you guys, and there seems to be quite a few. So
Yeah, so there's the meadows that followed by the Black Forest, then there's the swamp, mountains, there is then the plains, there's the deep north, there's the ocean, there's the mistlands, and then there's the ashlands. And what you're seeing here is we're actually switching biomes from Black Forest to the mountain. And as you can see, the weather quickly changes from a nice peaceful day to, obviously we're seeing like a snowstorm here. So things can change very quickly. And the exact opposite is true too. It can go from being a snowstorm to being a nice clear day kind of out of the blue. And do I think that Mirandus will have similar sorts of things? I do. Will they copy every single biome exactly? Probably not, but based on what we're seeing on the concept art, it certainly seems like they're probably going to be. Like, we've seen pretty much every single biome already from their concept art, so it's going to be pretty close.
True story. I used to love walking in blizzards with my dad as a kid. And growing up in Canada, with no shortage of blizzards. So,
yeah, my father used to take me for walks around upstate. Taught me the value of a good walking stick.
yeah.
My grandmother's house, like in the woods, there was nothing else around there. It was her house and just woods. You see there, we just murdered that wolf. Virtual, good job, buddy.
Thanks.
There you go.
I'm actually considering changing my Discord name to the Duke of the Wolf, since I've got a wolf box.
Nice. So right now we're coming up to the village of the Baron here. It's just across this last bridge, and this is the start of the Baron as we enter here. So you can see the sign. Obviously, we're still in the snowstorm. The first thing we're going to do, obviously, in the snowstorm is probably get out of the snowstorm. So we're going to, beeline it directly to the Baron's house, which is just in here, and someone, left the door open. So we're heading up kind of to the main floor here, warm up by the fire, probably get a nice rested buff. And you can see the area that we mentioned in the screenshot where the Baron can sit and eat, kind of this like throne room. They have a nice view all around. And as you can see through the windows as well, it's still snowing. And if we keep an eye out there, we'll see if it clears up at some point in time, at which point we can, continue on our journey and show the tour of the deed a little bit better. There's a cartography table there for ease of access. And we're heading up here to the third floor, which is the Baron's bedroom. And we're already starting to see, as we mentioned, see how it's already starting to clear up. So like I said, in these biomes, the weather can be somewhat unpredictable. And this is, a perfect example of just that.
One time I was top of a mountain in Switzerland with my ex-wife, and it was just so crazy. The changes in weather was just insane. It would go from super sunny to snowing to hail. Question on the rested buff. Can you maybe explain that for people that have never played Valheim? And do you think there's going to be something like that in Mirandus?
So rested buff you gain by being near certain items in the game, as long as you have a roof over your head. It increases your stamina regen, which makes it much easier to play the game. If you ever played Valheim, if you don't have rested buff, or if you're wet, if you don't have food buffs, the game is borderline impossible to play.
Aaelim, do you feel like their sleep and food system is kind of copying that design a little bit?
Yeah, so as we'll see when we get to some of the other deeds, we'll see some incredibly close copying. The food system in this game here is very similar in the way that, it helps you regen energy and such. And the only thing I was going to say previously was that, the food in this game also helps restore your hit points a bit as well. And interestingly enough, that was the only thing that didn't exist in Mirandus, and a dev post within the last month or two mentioned that the food will potentially help restore some hit points over time as well. So yeah, I would say it's fairly closely related at the very least.
Yeah, continue on here a little bit. Head back outside now that it's clearing up. Take a look at the rest of the deed here. There we go.
Yeah, there we have a little camp here. Now that we can come in out of the snow, potentially rest up, restore your hit points to full. what we're seeing here, you see the sign saying "to the prince," and this is the walkway down all the way to the prince, which is a good. At walking speeds, it's probably about 5 or 6 minutes, and that's quite a journey, almost equivalent to the way up here from the marquee, actually.
Don't slip on those steps.
So we're coming up to the cemetery here, and you see all the signs. That's just, it's meant as a joke. A lot of these cemetery signs don't have any significant meaning, but, we decided to put something there just because the space was available. This side here is an entranceway potentially on some barrens. This we're using specifically as an overlook because, we have a pretty nice view here of the plains, a mountain in the off distance, and a forest biome. To the far left, we also have an ocean. So on the right side, we have the 7 farming plots. And you're probably like, that doesn't look like typical farming. And that would be the case. In Valheim, when you're in the mountain biome, you can actually make normal farming foods like grains and such. You can only make trees, and specifically only pine trees. So 5x5 farming plot has 1 pine tree. Now, Mirandus has not confirmed that you can grow trees. However, in most MMORPGs, that is an option. So it is something I expect to be able to see. Whether or not they include it, though, is unknown at this time.
I remember you mentioned to me there was a game that you were able to grow trees. And which one was that again? Another MMO?
Well, Arcade, that's one of the
Arcade.
main things you grow in farming. Obviously, in Valheim, you can grow it as well. There's quite a few games that have farming that you can grow trees in, actually. So here is the temple, and once again, we're going to be praying to our lovely green pole god, the god of Valrandus, which is yet unnamed. He seems to make an appearance in many a temple, to say the least.
Praying for less snow.
Well, it seems like we got that earlier on, eh?
That's right.
Prayer.
So right ahead of us here is kind of the start of the market area, which is quite concentrated. We have a jewelry stand. We have a cloth stand. We also have the 5x5 decoration. Here we're using it as a brazier just because for lighting and ease of access. And we're coming into the rest of the area here. We have a bread stand and a little meat stand here. Need to get some meat in there, get that thing going. And we have a little woodworking stand, which we can use to repair or craft tools or anything else that could potentially aid us on our journey. Maybe make some materials to bring to the archery to make some arrows. Lots of potential options, potentially even helping to craft some pieces for like tools and the like.
Make a couple axes to chop those trees down.
Yeah, well, that's another good option too. A mixture potentially of this plus the forge, and could probably make some good axes for those trees. And those trees, of course, will help to further build up the barren and stuff as well.
I feel like a broken record, but I really hope that there's a lot of repair utility and repair functionality inside of Mirandus, which obviously is baked into Valheim, because so many of the deeds and the exemplars will have great careers if there's repair. But if you can't repair weapons, or you don't need to repair weapons, blacksmiths might run out of business over time. So it's a great function.
Yeah, and beyond just the weapons and such, being able to repair, even if they have like building repairs, armor repairs, weapons, tools, you name it, that's a huge set of economic loops that can be added, and ones that'll constantly keep everybody busy. So yeah, it would be great if they had that for sure.
Yeah, I think the key from a gameplay perspective is you don't want to have to repair your buildings and your walls every day. So if they get the tuning right, and maybe you need to repair once a month or once every couple of weeks, I think that'd be fine.
Yeah, or Valheim, you have to repair every 5 seconds, I think.
Like nonstop.
So here we just have a little archery stand, which is useful for for hunting, and there's a lot of hunting grounds in this area. This Baron specifically is quite remote. As you can see from the distance, we had to go from the nearest town. So you're going to, take advantage of ranged weapons here. And, with all the animals and such that you get, you're going to be able to use the simple tannery, and also there was that hitching post. Armor shop, fairly basic armors here. This is not the highest tier of armor shops, but enough so that the average adventurer can meet the challenges that would be appropriate to the area that we're in here. And here we have a weapon shop, and we have a decent selection of weapons. As we were mentioning axes, we do have axes there on the right, and we have swords, and we have a whole selection. And we're coming into the tavern, which I quite aggressively slammed the door on. Looks like potentially Virtuwul and Van. That's Beebs there, just so we know. And he was behind the fires are not lit, and it's getting pretty cold outside there. So the main thing is to get those fires lit up here. There we go. Now we have a proper, nice, warm tavern, lots of mugs of ale, lots of good food. And I'm like, well, no rest for the weary. We're going to continue on here.
With the fire and get out of here. Close people out, light the fire, and leave.
So now we're coming on. This is the kind of the northeast corner of the D. There's the potion shop there on the right. All your standard amenities with potions, resistance potions, stamina potions, mana potions, health potions, pretty much everything you could need for adventuring. And here we have a forge. We have a blast furnace, we have a smelter, everything you need to get those tools and weapons and stuff rolling. And as we mentioned previously in videos, forges can be used for selling as well. So on the right there, you see a shield that was crafted, and that would also be for sale. I'm gonna craft something, but it seems like we're lacking material. So, there, as mentioned previously, there is a cave nearby here, so we could potentially go there and build up some materials.
Time to do a little dungeon farming.
Yep. So this is just a pathway down. You can see in the distance we have the dungeon itself, and in there you can gather various materials to build and craft weapons and armors and anything else you could need to supply the Baron. So we're just on the way with a whole hunting party here going through.
I was going to say, we finally made it. We were leaving you hanging there to dry for a minute.
So it's a pretty ominous looking dungeon, right?
Which excites me.
And of course we have a Drake there that is guarding it for sure. We make short work of the Drake with a series of arrows and an AoE hammer attack from Van there. So the next thing is to make sure everyone's ready and head on into the dungeon. And here is the details of the sign. So this is the billboard. Every single deed has this above on the observation deck, and it has all the details of each deed. So you can see Village of the Baron. It has a 20 by 20 house, 7 farming plots, 12 decorative plots, 8 5 by 5s, and 8 10 by 10 plots. And to finish it off, we just have a nice aerial view so you can kind of see everything to scale. When you're on ground level, it's kind of easy to get lost within the deed to know what you're actually looking at. But from the aerial view, you can have a better idea of the entire scale, the surroundings, and how everything is correlated with each other. So I always like to have one aerial view per deed to, kind of put things in perspective.
And that's it. That's the review of the Village of the Baron. Again, if you're passionate and excited about Mirandus, make sure you join us, mastersofmaterium.com. Go to the website, join our Discord, and join the guild. That's it. Thank you very much.
Looking forward to the next one. Take care.